What would you say is the worst thing that could happen to an orphan child? Well, whatever your guess was, I'm sure it cannot be compared to the tragedy that befell the two foster kids, Blake Devon and London Devon. They were beaten, abused, starved, and eventually killed by someone who was supposed to be the mom in their lives. This is the twisted case of Avantae Deven. Born around 1962, Avantae Deven was raised in a troubled background with a long history of domestic abuse and substance abuse. As a child, she was constantly abused, both physically and mentally. She never knew what it felt like to be loved by a parent, so she grew up with a twisted mind and mentality. As a little girl, when she had issues and tried going to her mother for help, she would leave the conversation feeling hurt and abused. Her relationship with her mom was difficult, and her mother's behavior could be considered manipulative and controlling. So little Avante usually felt isolated and alone. Avantae Deven struggled with depression and anxiety from a very young age. She felt sad, empty, and scared for no reason, and she often couldn't sleep or eat. She went to therapy many times as a teenager to try to feel better, but it was a tough journey. As she got older, she dated many people hoping to find love and happiness, but most relationships ended quickly. Some guys didn't understand her, some were mean, and others just didn't care. All these things made her even more confused and lonely. After many failed relationships, she met Kent Devon. He was different from the others. He was kind, patient, and understanding. He listened to her, made her feel safe, and loved her for who she was, flaws and all. They got married soon, and for the first time in her life, Avante felt truly loved and accepted. She thought she had finally found her happy ending. But sadly, her past struggles would later come back to haunt her, leading her to a series of tragic events that would change her life forever. After her marriage, it seemed as if Avantae Deven's life was finally falling into place. She had found love, gotten married, and was building a life with Kent. But unfortunately, things were not exactly as they seemed. Behind the facade of a happy marriage, Avante's relationship with Kent was slowly breaking apart. The cracks were invisible to the naked eye, even to their neighbors, who couldn't tell that the couple's bond was no longer there. The love and understanding that once held them together were slowly disappearing, replaced by resentment and anger. The once happy couple was now living in a state of quiet desperation, each waiting for the other to make the first move. In 2001, the fragile bond between Avante and Kent finally shattered. The couple couldn't handle each other anymore, and Kent could no longer bear to live under the same roof as his wife. He made the painful decision to move out, leaving Avante alone in the home they once shared. The separation was swift and decisive, with Kent immediately filing for divorce. The grounds for the divorce were shocking for those who knew the couple. Kent was heard multiple times stating the fact that he and Avante did not have any children together, implying that there was no longer any reason to stay in the marriage. The once loving relationship had dissolved into a mere legal contract with no emotional ties to bind them together. Avante continued to live alone with the hope that her husband would one day decide to return to her. But sadly, that never happened, even though their divorce wasn't finalized until the end of 2006. Following the finalization of her divorce, Avante tried her hands on different new relationships, but none of them seemed to work out for her. After going around in circles for a few years, Avantae Deven came up with an idea that she thought would solve her issues with loneliness. She decided to adopt and raise children. She believed that being loved by children would fill the void in her heart. But just like in her last relationship, her messed up nature ruined everything. In 2011, Avantae Deven made the life-changing decision to adopt a young girl named London. She gave her the last name Devon and welcomed her into her family with open arms. As a first-time parent, Avante was determined to give London the best possible life. She poured her heart and soul into raising her, striving to be the most loving, attentive, and caring mother she could be. At first, Avante's efforts seemed to pay off. London thrived under her care, and she felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment she had never known before. However, as time went on, Avante's attempts to be the perfect mother began to take a toll on her. The more she tried to please London, the more she felt overwhelmed by her own dark past. Avante's troubled history, which she had kept hidden for so long, began to resurface. The memories she had tried to bury deep within her started to haunt her once again. Her insecurities and fears stemming from her own childhood traumas began to manifest in her relationship with London. As the pressure to be the perfect mother mounted, Avante's true nature started to reveal itself. She became increasingly irritated, short-tempered, and controlling. Her behavior towards London began to change, and the loving, attentive mother she once knew slowly disappeared. The sweet, innocent girl who had brought so much joy into her life was now witnessing the darker side of Avantae Deven. For months, Avantae Deven's behavior towards her daughter London became increasingly disturbing. Meanwhile, not long after, she adopted a son named Blake, but Avante had transformed into a different person. She would often yell at them, physically abuse them, and even lock them in their rooms for hours on end. The kids were living in a nightmare, and they didn't know how to escape. As time went on, the kids became more and more withdrawn. They stopped playing outside and even stopped interacting with their neighbors. Not long after, the children were nowhere to be found, and nobody even took notice of it. Subsequently, their foster mom, Avantae Deven, adopted more children, and in the eyes of friends and neighbors, everything seemed all right. The neighbors didn't even realize that London and Blake were missing until much later. 2 whole years went by without anyone seeing or hearing from London or Blake. But in December 2023, the truth finally came to light. One of the other children that Avantae Deven had adopted had a mental breakdown and revealed the shocking truth to the police. The child told them that Blake had suffered a broken arm and had died a long time ago. London's whereabouts were still unknown, but it was clear that she was in grave danger. The police were horrified by what they heard. They immediately launched an investigation into the disappearances of London and Blake, and what they found was heartbreaking. The kids had been suffering at the hands of their own mother, and no one had known or done anything to stop it. They were severely maltreated, and this affected not only their physical state, but their mental health as well. But since the police did not have any tangible evidence against Avantae Deven, they decided to take the investigation more seriously. They were alarmed by the lack of reports regarding the missing children. No one had filed a report for Blake until January 2024, and Avantae Deven never even mentioned that London was missing. Actually, nobody even noticed they were missing, and with all the kids living with Avante, it was pretty hard to tell they were no longer there. This raised suspicion, and the police launched a thorough investigation into Blake's disappearance. They searched every possible lead, interviewed every potential witness, and examined every shred of evidence. As they dug deeper, they made a startling discovery. Avantae Deven had reported Blake as a runaway child on April 19th, more than 2 years after he was last seen. This was a shocking revelation, as it meant that Avante had waited over 2 years to report her own child missing. This delayed report raised many red flags, and the police immediately turned their attention to Avante as a person of interest. They couldn't understand why Avante would wait so long to report her child missing. They wondered if she was hiding something, or if she was involved in his disappearance. They decided to investigate her further, looking into her past and her behavior around the time of Blake's disappearance. During investigations, they found more evidence that pointed to her involvement in the disappearance of both Blake and London. They discovered that she had a history of neglect and abuse, that she had been using her children as punching bags, objects she could vent her anger out on. At this point, the police realized that they had a serious case on their hands, and they were determined to get to the bottom of it. As they dug further, they made a chilling discovery. Apparently, London Devon had vanished without a trace long before Blake did. The last time anyone saw London was in 2019, and yet Avantae Deven had never reported her missing. This was a disturbing revelation, as it suggested that Avante was more concerned with hiding the truth than finding her children. The police were now faced with a sinister scenario. 2 children both missing, and a mother who seemed more interested in covering her tracks than seeking help. The investigation intensified, with the police working day and night to uncover what Avantae Deven was trying to hide. As they dug even deeper, they discovered more and more stories that did not add up. Avante had been lying to friends, family, and even her own children, all to conceal the truth about what had happened to Blake in London. The police found evidence of fabricated stories, fake alibis, and contradictory statements, all designed to throw them off her trail. But the more evidence they found, the clearer it became that Avante's actions were not those of a worried mother, but of a calculating individual who would stop at nothing to make sure she wasn't thrown in jail. After the shocking revelation that Avantae Deven had reported Blake as a runaway 2 years after his disappearance, and that London was also missing, the police knew that they had to act swiftly. They obtained a search warrant for Avante's property, hoping to find any clues that could lead them to the truth. As they combed through the house and surrounding areas, their worst fears were confirmed. In a burn barrel on the property, they made a grisly discovery: the skeletal remains of a child. The discovery sent shivers down the spines of the investigators, but the police had to move quickly if they hoped to bring Avante to justice. They immediately called in forensic experts to analyze the remains, hoping to identify the child and piece together the events leading up to their tragic fate. Avante was immediately arrested, taken into custody, and booked into jail on multiple charges related to the disappearance and the murder of her 2 children, Blake and London. The police and investigators put in extra time into building a solid case against Avante, even going as far as interviewing neighbors, family members, and friends to find out everything they could about Avante's nature, anything they could use against her in court. Avantae Deven was held without bail, pending a grand jury hearing. While she sat in jail waiting, the police and forensic experts continued to study the case and examine the evidence over and over again. They analyzed evidence from the burn barrel and the house. They also conducted second interviews with the family members or friends of Avantae Deven who had interesting things to say during the first interview. A few weeks later, a grand jury hearing was held to decide if Avantae Deven should be charged with a crime. The prosecutors presented strong evidence against her, showing that she had committed horrible acts against her children. The grand jury carefully considered the evidence and returned a true bill, charging Avante with multiple counts of murder, child abuse, and evidence tampering. As the case against Avantae Deven grew stronger, her legal team realized they were in trouble, and in a last-ditch effort, they asked the court to order a psychological evaluation to determine if Avante was mentally fit to stand trial. They claimed that she was not capable of understanding the legal proceedings or assisting in her own defense. However, the court-appointed psychiatrist conducted a thorough evaluation and found Avantae Deven to be competent and fit for trial. This meant that she was aware of the charges against her, could understand the legal process, and was capable of working with her lawyers to defend herself. With this evaluation, the court rejected Avante's legal team's attempt to delay the trial. The case would move forward, and Avante would face justice for her heinous crimes. The prosecution was now one step closer to holding her accountable for the harm she had inflicted on her innocent children. To add to the evidence piled up against Avantae Deven, one of the children in her care told the police that they had not seen their siblings in years. They gave a detailed account of the mistreatment they and their siblings have been getting while under Avante's care. The child also expressed how suspicious the disappearance of her siblings, Blake and London, was. Blake was last seen by his foster siblings around 2022 when he was around 15 years old, and his sister London, who was a lot younger than Blake at the time of her disappearance, had not been seen by anyone since early 2019. As if that wasn't enough trouble for Avantae Deven, on April 10, 2024, Avante's mother, Leonie Maxwell, filed a case against Avante. The case was filed due to the fact that Maxwell, who was on ventilators and feeding tubes as a result of a stroke and brain injury she suffered back in January 2023, had been neglected by her daughter. Avante failed to respond to hospital staff calls regarding necessary medical decisions that would aid the recovery of Leonie Maxwell. The case was also filed to ensure the proper management of Leonie Maxwell's finances. On April 11, 2024, Judge Tony King made a crucial decision in the case involving the well-being of Avante's sick-old mother, Maxwell. After careful consideration, she determined that immediate action was necessary to ensure Maxwell's safety. Maxwell's condition has left her unable to communicate or make decisions for herself, and unfortunately no one else has come forward to assume responsibility for her care since her daughter was being held in police custody for the murder of innocent children. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Judge King acknowledged that Maxwell was vulnerable and at risk of harm or even death if no one intervened. She therefore granted the request for emergency protective services, authorizing professionals to step in and provide the necessary care and support to keep Maxwell safe. This decision was a critical turning point in the case, as it ensured that Maxwell would receive the assistance she so desperately needed. With Judge King's ruling, a team of dedicated professionals would work tirelessly to provide Maxwell with the medical attention, personal care, and emotional support she required to thrive. On April 15th, District Judge Cole Jordan III issued a court order that addressed Avantae Deven's role in her mother's care. While Avante was permitted to visit her mother, Maxwell, in the hospital, the judge made it clear that she would not be in control of her mother's medical decisions. The order stated that Avante was not allowed to give directives or instructions to the medical personnel treating her mother. Instead, she was expected to treat all medical staff with dignity and respect at all times. This condition was non-negotiable, and any failure to comply would result in Avante being removed from the hospital premises. In essence, the judge's order was designed to ensure that Maxwell received the necessary medical care without Avante's interference. The hospital staff was empowered to terminate Avante's visit and remove her from the hospital if she caused any disruptions or failed to comply with the order. In a significant development in the case, District Court Judge Tony King made two important rulings. Firstly, she granted the request by the Department of Social Services, the DSS, to take control of Maxwell's medical care, ensuring that her well-being and safety are prioritized. Secondly, Judge King ordered that Maxwell's assets, totaling over $15,000, be frozen until further notice. This means that no one, including Avantae Deven, can access or manage Maxwell's finances without the court's permission. This move is aimed at protecting Maxwell's financial resources and preventing any potential misuse or exploitation. Furthermore, Judge King directed Wells Fargo, Maxwell's bank, to turn over her financial records for the period between February and April. This will allow the court to review her financial transactions and ensure that her assets are being managed appropriately. By making these rulings, Judge King has taken a crucial step in safeguarding Maxwell's welfare and financial security in the midst of concerns about Avantae Deven's ability to manage her mother's affairs. A legal notice was issued to inform Maxwell that the court had granted a petition to freeze her assets and appoint a guardian to manage her financial affairs. The notice explained that this action was taken due to concerns that she was being financially exploited by her caretaker and daughter, Avantae Deven. The court's decision was based on credible information and beliefs that Avante was misusing Maxwell's funds for her own benefit rather than using them for Maxwell's care and well-being. This exploitation may have been ongoing for some time, and the court intervened to protect Maxwell's financial resources and prevent further potential harm. A hearing was initially scheduled to review the matter and consider further action. However, the hearing has been rescheduled to an unknown date, allowing more time for the parties involved to prepare and for the court to review additional evidence. The court's order and continued hearing aim to ensure that Maxwell's financial affairs are managed appropriately, and that her assets are protected from any further potential exploitation. The court's actions prioritize Maxwell's financial security and well-being, recognizing her vulnerability as a dependent adult. On June 27, 2024, Avantae Deven appeared in court in Fayetteville, North Carolina, to face a slew of severe charges related to the deaths of her two adopted children, Blake and London Devens. The charges included 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of concealment of death, kidnapping, and felony child abuse. This devastating case came to light after a series of disturbing revelations that exposed the horrific conditions the children were subjected to. The investigation began in November 2023 when police responded to a mental health crisis at Deven's home. During this visit, a resident revealed that Blake Deven, who had been missing for several years, was dead and had a broken arm when they last saw him. This alarming disclosure prompted a deeper investigation into the family's circumstances. Avantae Deven had adopted 5 children, including Blake and London. The investigation uncovered that at least 3 of these children were subjected to inhumane conditions, including severe starvation, neglect, and confinement in small dark rooms. The children were deprived of food unless they completed extensive punitive writing assignments. The investigation also revealed that Blake Deven, last seen in 2022, was fatally starved and his remains were dismembered and burned. Similarly, London Devon, who was last seen in 2019 and required special care due to disabilities, succumbed to fatal neglect and starvation. Authorities found partial human remains in a metal burn barrel at the Devon residence, which were later identified as belonging to London. They believe the other set of remains is likely Blake's, though confirmation is pending. The discovery of these heinous crimes sent shockwaves through the community, raising questions about the failure of the system to protect the children. In the court hearing, Devon was denied bail and remains in custody. The court appointed her a lawyer and set the next hearing date for July 17, 2024. If convicted, Devon could face the death penalty. The Avantae Deven case serves as a tragic reminder of the horrors of child abuse and the importance of vigilance in protecting vulnerable children. The case involving Avantae Deven has yet to be finalized. All we can do right now is pray that Blake and London Devon's killer faces the full wrath of the law. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.